My name's Ethan Walker, and last summer I took a fire lookout shift in northern Idaho that I was never supposed to be alone for. This happened last summer. I was 25. I'd taken a seasonal job as a fire lookout in northern Idaho. It wasn't some lifelong dream. I just needed distance. From noise, from people, from the feeling that I was constantly behind in life. Up there, none of that mattered. The job was simple. Sit in the tower, log smoke sightings, radio and weather reports. Stay alone for 2 weeks at a time. No neighbors, no traffic, no unexpected visitors. Just forest in every direction. The tower stood on a ridge about 6 miles from the nearest paved road. One dirt road led up to it. No side trails, no alternate access. If someone came up, you'd know. My shift started on a Monday afternoon. Everything was normal, quiet, calm in the way only deep wilderness can be. But after sunset, the forest changes. It doesn't get louder, it gets attentive. Every branch snapping in the distance feels deliberate. Every shift in wind sounds closer than it should. Around 11:40 p.m., I was inside the cabin finishing a weather log when I noticed headlights far down the dirt road. That alone was unusual. No one was scheduled to relieve me. No maintenance visit, no ranger patrol, and even if there had been, they always radio first. I grabbed the radio. Lookout 17 checking in. Static. I adjusted the antenna and tried again. Nothing but interference. That was strange. The radio had worked perfectly all evening. The headlights moved slowly up the road, not bouncing like someone speeding, not hesitant like someone lost. Controlled. Then halfway up the ridge, they stopped. The lights shut off. The forest went completely dark again. I waited. 10 minutes passed. I told myself it was probably a hunter who realized he'd taken the wrong road. Then I heard the engine again. Closer. That's when it clicked. They hadn't turned around. They had shut off their lights and continued driving in the dark. My stomach tightened. A vehicle reached the clearing below the tower. I couldn't see it clearly from the windows, but I could hear the low idle of the engine. Then it shut off. A door opened, closed, and then footsteps on gravel. There's only one way up to a fire lookout tower, a narrow metal staircase bolted to the side. I heard a boot hit the first step. Metal creaked. Another step. Slow, unhurried, like whoever it was knew exactly where I was. I grabbed the radio again. Dead. No signal bars on my phone either. That part wasn't unusual. Service had never worked up there. But the timing felt wrong. The footsteps continued climbing, each step echoing through the metal frame of the tower. About halfway up, they stopped. Silence. Then a man's voice drifted upward. "You're alone tonight." It wasn't phrased like a question. I didn't answer. My throat felt dry. A few seconds later, he spoke again. "You weren't supposed to take this shift." That sentence didn't make sense. The weekly schedule wasn't public. It wasn't posted online. It was internal, sent through ranger email. Very few people even knew my name, let alone my rotation. The staircase creaked again. Another step, then another. I backed away from the windows and turned off the interior light. If he looked up, I didn't want him seeing my silhouette. The climbing stopped just below the trap door that led into the cabin. Then came 3 soft knocks against the metal frame. Not aggressive, not rushed, almost polite. I stayed completely still. After a moment, the trapdoor handle rattled. Locked. It held. He didn't force it, didn't kick it, didn't raise his voice. He just stood there. I could hear subtle movement outside, boots shifting against the metal platform. And then he said something that made my skin crawl. "You always choose places like this." Always. That word stuck. Like this wasn't random. Like this wasn't the first time he'd found me somewhere isolated. My mind started racing through every remote trip I'd taken over the years. Camping alone, road trips, random weekend cabins. Had someone noticed a pattern? Had someone been watching longer than just tonight? Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. It felt stretched. Finally, I heard him step back onto the staircase. One step down, another, the metal groaning beneath his weight. The sound faded gradually till I heard gravel again below. A car door, the engine starting, tires crunching against dirt, and then nothing. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall facing the trapdoor until sunrise. When daylight finally came, I climbed down carefully. There were fresh tire tracks in the clearing beneath the tower. Wide tread, deep impressions in the mud from the previous night's rain. But here's what I can't explain. There were no tracks leading up the road. I walked nearly a mile down that dirt road. The soil was soft everywhere. There should have been a clear trail. There wasn't. Just the tracks in the clearing, like the vehicle had started and ended there. When I radioed base at 8 a.m., signal worked perfectly. Clear as ever, I reported everything. They told me no one had authorization to be up there. No patrols, no scheduled checks. I asked if anyone had accessed the shift logs. They said no. And here's the part that keeps replaying in my head. Very few people knew I'd swapped into that week's rotation at the last minute. I'd taken it from another lookout who had a family emergency, which means, if what he said was true, if I wasn't supposed to take that shift, then maybe he wasn't expecting me. Maybe he was expecting the person who was originally scheduled. I didn't finish the season. I told them it was personal reasons. But sometimes I think about that sentence. You weren't supposed to take this shift. And I wonder, if I hadn't taken it, would someone else have been alone in that tower instead? And would he have knocked the same way? My name's Megan Carter, and the first fall I lived alone in Colorado, a man started showing up outside my door every night at exactly the same time. This happened last fall. I was 27 and had just moved into a small rental house outside Denver. It was my first time living completely alone. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly families, porch lights on timers, dogs barking at normal things. Nothing ever really happened there. 2 weeks before this started, I installed a doorbell camera. Not because I was worried, because my mom insisted. You live alone now, she kept saying. Just get one. So I did. I didn't think I'd ever actually use it. The first alert came on a Tuesday night, 11:12 p.m. Person detected. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the app. There was a man standing near the sidewalk in front of my house. Not on the porch, not walking up, just standing there, facing my house. The porch light was off, so his face wasn't clear. But he wasn't pacing. He wasn't checking his phone. He was just still. After about 20 seconds, he walked out of frame. That was it. I replayed it a few times. Told myself maybe he cut across the yard. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he had the wrong address. I locked my doors anyway. The next night, 11:14 p.m., another alert. Person detected. This time he was closer, standing at the edge of my driveway. Same jacket, same build, same posture. He didn't approach the door, didn't ring the bell, didn't knock. Just stood there, looking at the house. I watched the live feed. After about 30 seconds, he slowly stepped backward, never turning around, just backing out of frame. I didn't sleep much that night. The third night is when it stopped feeling random. 11:16 p.m., motion detected. But this time the clip didn't show him walking up. It showed him already standing directly in front of my door, close enough that the camera lens slightly warped his face. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at the door, like he was listening. Then he leaned forward. Not to knock, not to ring the bell. He pressed his ear gently against the door. My bedroom was upstairs, but suddenly the house felt very small, very thin. I was watching live, frozen. After about 10 seconds, he stepped back and slowly lifted his head toward the camera. He stared directly into it. No smile, no expression. Then he raised his hand and held up 3 fingers. That's when my stomach dropped, because that meant this wasn't random. The next night, 11:18 p.m., he was back, standing in the same spot, looking straight into the camera. He held up 2 fingers. This time he stayed longer. Long enough that I started wondering if he could see movement inside. I called the police after he left. They drove through the neighborhood, didn't find anyone. The officer told me sometimes people do this as a prank, teenagers trying to scare homeowners. But this man didn't move like a teenager. He moved like someone patient, like someone rehearsing something. The following night, I turned off every light in the house and stayed upstairs watching the live feed before 11. Waiting. 11:20 p.m., motion detected. He stepped into frame slowly, walked right up to the door, looked directly into the camera, and held up one finger. My hands were shaking when I dialed 911. While the phone was ringing, he leaned closer to the camera. So close I could see stubble along his jaw. His lips moved. The microphone barely caught it. I didn't process it at the time. He stepped sideways. Out of frame. I thought he had left again. Then I heard it. Not from the front door, from downstairs. A soft knock. 3 taps. On the back door. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the yard. The side gate was open. There were partial footprints in the dirt near the fence line, but nothing clear enough to track. I told him about what he whispered. Later that night, I replayed the footage over and over, turned the volume all the way up. What he said was quiet, almost calm. Wrong house. At first, I thought that meant he had the wrong address. But when the officers reviewed the earlier clips with me, we noticed something I hadn't seen. The first night, before he ever stepped onto my lawn, you can see him across the street, standing perfectly still, watching my house for nearly 2 full minutes, not wandering, not confused, waiting, which means he knew exactly which house he was at. I moved out 3 weeks later. The landlord replaced the doorbell camera. As far as I know, nothing like that ever happened again. But sometimes I think about that whisper, wrong house, and I can't decide which possibility is worse, that he made a mistake or that he didn't. My name's Ryan Mitchell, and when I was 23 working the overnight shift at a highway hotel, a guest in room 417 knew more about me than he should have. This happened about a year ago. I was 23. I had just moved to a new city and taken a night shift job at a mid-range hotel off the interstate. Not fancy, not sketchy, just the kind of place business travelers use for one night and forget about the next morning. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. If you've ever worked hotel nights, you know the rhythm. After midnight, it dies. You check in the occasional late arrival, refill the coffee station, run the audit, stare at security monitors, fight sleep. Most nights feel longer than they are. The first strange thing happened at 1:40 a.m. The front desk phone rang, internal line, room 417. I answered with the standard greeting. No response, just faint static. I waited. Then I heard breathing. Not heavy, not rushed, just slow, steady air moving through a receiver. I asked if everything was okay in the room. The line disconnected. I checked the system. Room 417 had checked in at 11:15 p.m. Single male guest. Paid cash. No luggage noted by the evening shift. Unusual, but not alarming. About 20 minutes later, one of the elevator cameras popped onto my monitor automatically. Motion detection, 4th floor. I pulled up the feed. A man had just stepped off the elevator. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap low over his face. He didn't walk toward any door. He just stood there in the hallway, looking directly at the camera mounted at the end of the corridor, almost like he was confirming where it was. After about 30 seconds, he turned and walked out of frame. I assumed he'd gone to his room. At 2:10 a.m., the desk phone rang again. Room 417. I felt a chill before I even picked it up. I answered. Silence. Then breathing again, closer this time. Then a calm voice. Are you alone tonight? The way he said it wasn't teasing. It wasn't flirtatious. It sounded observational, like he already knew the answer. I didn't respond to the question. I asked if he needed extra towels or anything brought up. The call disconnected. I checked the staff schedule in the system. Just me. No security on duty, no manager on site overnight. At 2:25 a.m., the side entrance camera triggered. After midnight, that door requires a key card. I pulled the access log. Key card, room 417. The camera showed him stepping outside. He stopped just beyond the doorway under the parking lot light and stood there, facing toward the front of the building, toward the lobby windows, toward me. It's hard to explain the feeling of knowing someone is looking at you from outside when you're the only person inside. He stood there long enough that I started wondering if he could see movement behind the glass. Then he stepped back inside. A few seconds later, the elevator descended. Lobby level. The doors opened. He stepped out. and walked toward the front desk. Up close, he looked normal, mid-30s, clean, no visible signs of intoxication, but his eyes moved constantly, not nervous, calculating. "Can I help you?" I asked. He rested one hand lightly on the counter. "You work every Tuesday?" he said. My stomach tightened. It was Tuesday. I asked if there was an issue with his room. He didn't answer. Instead, he glanced past me toward the hallway that led to the back office. "You shouldn't sit with your back to that door," he said quietly. There was no threat in his tone. That's what made it worse. It sounded like advice. He slid his key card across the counter. "I'm checking out." It was 2:37 a.m. I processed the checkout without another word. He walked out the front entrance. I switched to the parking lot camera. He got into a dark sedan, started the engine, but he didn't leave. He sat there for almost 15 minutes. At 2:55 a.m., the desk phone rang again. Internal line, room 417. My pulse spiked. He had checked out. The keycard was deactivated. The room should have been empty. I answered slowly. Silence, then breathing. But this time it wasn't coming through the receiver. It was behind me, from the hallway leading to the back office. I turned around carefully. The hallway lights were dimmed for night mode. The back office door was slightly open. I was certain I'd closed it earlier. I stepped around the desk and walked toward it. The office was empty, but something was different. The security monitor inside wasn't on the lobby view anymore. It was displaying the employee parking lot. And on the screen, his car wasn't in the guest lot. It was parked behind the building, near the employee entrance, the area not visible from the front desk. I locked myself inside the office and called 911. Police arrived within minutes. They found the car. Driver's door open, engine still warm, but no one inside. During their search, one of the officers came back holding something in a clear evidence bag, a folded sheet of paper. It was a printed copy of our weekly staff schedule. My name highlighted. Every Tuesday night circled. He hadn't randomly asked if I worked Tuesdays. He already knew. Management reviewed the footage the next morning. The booking was under a fake ID. The phone number on file didn't exist. And here's the part that unsettled me the most. Security footage from earlier that night showed him entering through the employee entrance before his official check-in time, meaning he'd already been inside the building once. Before I ever answered that first call, they never caught him. No plate match, no confirmed identity. I transferred to day shift 2 weeks later. I still work in hospitality, but I don't work nights. And sometimes when I'm closing out a shift and I catch my reflection in the lobby glass, I think about what he said. You shouldn't sit with your back to that door. I don't think he was giving advice. I think he was measuring how long it would have taken if he'd decided not to leave.